In the room filled with the false, bright music of forced laughter and the delicate chime of champagne glasses, only 3 of us knew that a family was about to publicly break. My sister, Chloe, stood bathed in the warm glow of the spotlight, a perfect vision in emerald silk, graciously accepting congratulations for an achievement that was only half hers. My parents flanked her, their smiles as wide and brittle as spun sugar, their pride a tangible, suffocating force. And me, I was an island by the far wall, a ghost in a simple navy blue dress, clutching a glass of club soda and watching the grand, beautiful lie of our family play out its final, tragic act. The professionally printed banner hanging over the ornate marble fireplace read, "Congratulations, Dr. Chloe." The jaunty little exclamation point at the end feeling like a personal stab to my heart. It should have said, "Doctors." Plural. But my parents, in their carefully curated world, had always preferred the singular. This opulent, over-the-top party was for Chloe's graduation from medical school. Debt-free. It was a gift from our parents. They'd told everyone. A practical decision. My mind flashed back a month ago, to the moment the fault line in our family had cracked wide open. I had stood in their pristine, white-on-white kitchen, my own framed medical diploma in my hands, its weight suddenly unbearable. I just asked them a simple question. Why had they paid off all of Chloe's 6-figure student debt while mine remained? A mountain I was expected to climb alone. My mother hadn't even looked up from arranging a platter of artisanal cheeses. "Chloe needs the head start. Honey," she'd said, her voice breezy. She's always been more of a people person. "You've always been so focused. So self-sufficient." My father had then put his arm around her, forming a united, impenetrable front. "We're not punishing you, Elara," he'd said, his tone gentle, patronizing, as if explaining a simple math problem to a slow child. "We're enabling you. You thrive on challenges. Your sister is just more sensitive. It's simply a matter of being practical. Practical, resourceful, self-sufficient." These were the words they used to build a cage around me. The justifications for a lifetime of benign neglect. It was the reason they flew to see Chloe's collegiate tennis matches, but only remembered to call me after my research symposiums had already ended, asking vaguely, "So, how did your little presentation go?" It was the reason her 21st birthday was a new convertible parked in the driveway with a giant red bow. And mine, 6 minutes later, was a check for $100 with a note that said, "For your textbooks, dear." I remembered standing alone at my undergraduate thesis defense, my phone buzzing with a notification. It was a picture my mom had just posted, she and Dad, beaming, holding up a Go Chloe sign at a tennis tournament 1,000 miles away. Resourceful meant I didn't require their presence. Now, at this party, Chloe slipped away from her circle of admirers and appeared at my side, her smile tight. "This is mortifying," she whispered, her blue eyes a mirror of my own, clouded with a familiar guilt. Even as kids, she'd tried to bridge the gap they'd created. I recalled a Christmas when she'd received a beautiful, expensive dollhouse, and I'd gotten a set of encyclopedias. She had immediately tried to declare the dollhouse was for both of us, only for our mother to swoop in and say, "That's sweet, Chloe, but Elara has her books. She doesn't want to play with dolls." She had always known. Dad invited the dean of medicine, Chloe continued, her voice fierce. "The dean. For what? Because they paid my bills." "They're proud of you," I said, the words tasting like ash. It was the line I had forced myself to repeat for 26 years. "They should be proud of us," she corrected. We crossed the same finish line at the same time. The fact that they're pretending there was only one runner is wrong. She squeezed my arm, a gesture of solidarity that felt both wonderful and tragically overdue. Before I could respond, our mother materialized, all charm and efficiency. Chloe. Darling. The Hendersons are here. You remember Dr. Henderson, the chief of cardiology. You must come and say hello. She gently steered Chloe away, then glanced back at me. Her smile, not quite reaching her eyes. Elara, could you be a dear and find out if the caterers remembered the vegan spring rolls for your cousin? You know how she gets. And just like that, I was dismissed. The party manager, the resourceful one, tasked with handling the minor details while the star of the show was paraded around. I watched them go, my mother showcasing my twin sister like a prized racehorse. And I felt the familiar, dull ache of being invisible. But tonight was different. Tonight, the invisibility cloak was about to be set on fire. Because I knew something they didn't. A piece of information that would change everything. The world-renowned geneticist, Dr. Eris Thorne, had just walked through the door. My history with Dr. Thorne began in my 3rd year, when I submitted a research proposal that challenged a fundamental assumption in genetic sequencing. Most professors dismissed it as overly ambitious. Dr. Thorne, a Nobel laureate with a reputation for intellectual ruthlessness, had summoned me to his office. I had walked in terrified, expecting him to dismantle my thesis. Instead, he had looked at me over his spectacles and said, "This is either nonsense or it's brilliant. You have 6 months to prove to me which one it is. Don't waste my time." I didn't. I spent every spare moment in his lab, working, grueling hours, fueled by coffee and a desperate, burning need to prove myself to someone, anyone. I thrived under his demanding mentorship. The first time he'd reviewed my data and said, simply, "Good. This is very good." The feeling of validation was so overwhelming, I'd had to excuse myself to the restroom to compose myself. He didn't coddle me, he challenged me, pushed me, and for the first time, I felt seen for my mind. Not for my role as the quiet twin. He saw my resourcefulness not as a reason to leave me alone, but as a talent to be honed. He became the academic father I had always craved. And 2 days ago, he had called me into his office and given me the news that was about to detonate this entire party. 2 days ago, I had been sitting in his office, the air thick with the scent of old books and sterilized lab equipment. His walls weren't decorated, they were documented, covered in framed awards, complex genomic charts, and a single, striking photograph of him shaking hands with the King of Sweden. He had gestured for me to sit, his expression unreadable. I'd assumed I was there to be questioned about a statistical anomaly in my latest CRISPR dataset. My stomach had been in knots. "Elara," he began, steepling his long fingers. His voice was a low baritone that commanded attention without ever needing to be raised. "I received a communication this morning from the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences regarding the Stellan Prize for Genetic Innovation." My heart hammered against my ribs. The Stellan Prize. It was the Nobel for young researchers. An almost mythical honor awarded to a single postdoctoral candidate in the world each year for groundbreaking work. It was the stuff of daydreams, not real life. "The selection committee has reviewed your thesis on pathogenic gene repair," he continued, his eyes fixed on me. "Missing nothing. Specifically, your novel methodology for using a viral vector to deliver a targeted protein payload. They have made their decision." He paused, and the silence in the room was absolute. I held my breath, my hands clenched into fists in my lap. "They have awarded it to you." The words didn't compute at first. They floated in the air, abstract and nonsensical. Me, the Stellan Prize. A wave of vertigo washed over me. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and sudden. It was too much. All the lonely nights in the lab, the missed holidays, the quiet, gnawing feeling of being second best, all of it collapsed into this single, blinding moment of validation. "The prize," he went on, seemingly unfazed by my emotional state. Includes a 3-year research grant of $2 million. A visiting fellowship at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm. And he peered at the letter again. Full, immediate forgiveness of all outstanding educational loans. Debt-free. The words echoed the theme of the party my parents were throwing. But the context was universes apart. Chloe was debt-free because of their calculated generosity. I would be debt-free because of my own merit. Recognized on a global stage. The beautiful, terrible irony of it made me want to laugh and sob at the same time. I don't know what to say. Dr. Thorne. I finally managed to stammer, my voice thick. Say nothing, he said. Simply continue to produce work of this caliber. He then folded the letter and looked at me with a new intensity. I also received an invitation, it seems, to a celebration for your sister this weekend. A mass email to the faculty. I presume. My stomach plummeted. I knew instantly where this was going. I believe it would be most impactful to announce this news there. No. The word flew out of my mouth. Sharp with panic. Absolutely not. Please. Dr. Thorne. You can't. He raised an eyebrow. Why not? An achievement of this magnitude deserves to be celebrated. It's Chloe's night. I pleaded. The old habit of protecting her. Of keeping the peace. Kicking in with ferocious strength. My parents are throwing it for her. They'll see it as me trying to steal her spotlight. It will cause a terrible scene. It wouldn't be fair to Chloe. The thought of their disappointment, their anger, their accusations of my selfishness, was terrifying. For a moment, I would have rather given up the prize than face that confrontation. Doctor. Thorne listened patiently, his gaze never wavering. When I finished, he leaned forward slightly. Elada, he said, his voice softer now but no less firm. For 4 years, I have observed. I have seen your parents at university functions. I have heard them describe Chloe's ambitions in vivid detail while referring to your groundbreaking research as Alara's little lab project. I have seen the narrative they have constructed. He let that sink in. A victory that is shared with them privately will be privately dismissed. They will attribute it to luck, or to my influence, or they will find a way to minimize it to maintain their preferred reality. But a narrative that is publicly corrected, in front of their peers and the dean of medicine, becomes an undeniable fact. This is not about upstaging your sister, and it is certainly not about seeking their approval. It is about claiming the truth of your own story in a forum where it cannot be distorted. He was right. His logic was as sharp and irrefutable as a scalpel. They would find a way to diminish it. They always did. To them, my resourcefulness meant my successes were expected and required, no celebration. While Chloe's required constant support and fanfare. To correct that narrative would require an audience. It would require witnesses. The memory dissolved as Dr. rating the section. Thorne, now in the present, took a glass of sparkling water from a passing waiter. He caught my eye from across the crowded room and gave a slow, deliberate nod. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. The chessmaster was in place. The final moves of the game were about to be played, whether I felt ready for them or not. The knot in my stomach tightened. A cold mix of terror and a strange, unfamiliar flicker of anticipation. The evening wore on. A symphony of polite conversation and the clatter of silverware. I was seated at a secondary table, a satellite planet to the blazing sun of the head table where my parents presided with Chloe, the dean, and other assorted dignitaries. I watched my father hold court, his voice booming with pride as he recounted an anecdote about Chloe's childhood determination, a story that was, I knew, mostly fabricated. Every word, every laugh, every toast in her direction was a small, familiar cut. I pushed the seared salmon around my plate, my appetite long gone. Dr. Thorne was seated with other senior faculty, and he occasionally caught my eye. His expression, a calm reassurance that the endgame was near. Finally, after the dessert plates were cleared, my father stood and tapped his champagne glass with a spoon. A hush fell over the rooftop terrace. "Thank you all for coming," he began, beaming. "Tonight, we celebrate a truly remarkable achievement. As many of you know, the journey through medical school is a grueling one, and to emerge not only with a degree but completely debt-free is a testament to incredible focus and dedication." The crowd applauded politely. Chloe shifted in her seat, her gaze fixed on her plate. "We are so blessed," my mother added, standing to join him, placing a hand on Chloe's shoulder, "to have been able to invest in our daughter's future. We always knew she had the drive, the ambition, to make us proud. Chloe, we love you." She leaned down and kissed Chloe's cheek. The message, as always, was precise. They had invested in their daughter. Singular. He then raised his glass. To Chloe. Before anyone could drink, another voice cut through the air, clear and trembling slightly. "Actually, I'd like to say something." It was Chloe. She was on her feet, her face pale but her eyes resolute. She looked directly at me. A hush of confusion fell over the guests. "This celebration," Chloe said, her voice growing stronger. "It feels incomplete. It feels wrong. Audrey, Alara, and I, we both graduated. We both worked incredibly hard. And to be honest, Alara worked harder, because she did it all without the safety net I had." My parents froze. Their smiles stuck to their faces like masks. "Chloe, darling," my mother whispered, a sharp edge to her tone. "This isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," Chloe shot back, her loyalty to me finally overriding a lifetime of acquiescence. "I can't stand here and accept praise for an achievement that was bought for me, while my twin sister's equal, self-funded achievement is ignored. It's not right, and it never has been." My throat tightened, a knot of 26 years of unspoken words. My father, ever the politician, recovered first, forcing a hearty laugh. Of course. We are so proud of both our girls. Alara has done wonderfully, but tonight is a special celebration for Chloe's unique situation. It was at that exact moment of strained, public denial that Dr. Eris Thorne chose to stand. His tall, lean frame commanded immediate silence. All eyes turned to him. "If I may," he said, his voice calm and authoritative, cutting through the tension like a laser. "Since we are speaking of unique situations and remarkable achievements, this seems like the perfect moment to share some news regarding Dr. Elara Collins." My parents exchanged a worried glance. They knew his name, of course, but they had no concept of our relationship. They just saw a distinguished academic about to speak about their other, less interesting daughter. As some of you may know, Dr. Thorne began, his gaze sweeping the room before landing on the dean. The Stellan Prize for Genetic Innovation is awarded annually by the Royal Swedish Academy to a single young scientist whose work is deemed to have fundamentally shifted their field. It is, by any measure, the highest honor a researcher of her generation can receive. He let the weight of that statement settle in the silent room. I could feel the atmosphere shift. This wasn't a little lab project. The selection committee has reviewed Dr. Revan's Elara Collins' research on pathogenic gene repair, he announced, his voice ringing with profound gravity. This morning, I was informed that they have awarded her the 2025 Stellan Prize. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Murmurs erupted. I saw the Dean of Medicine lean forward, his eyes wide with astonishment, looking directly at me. Dr. Thorne wasn't finished. The prize includes a substantial research grant and a fellowship in Stockholm. It also comes with the complete, immediate forgiveness of all her educational loans. The applause started, then swelled into a roar. It was genuine, thunderous, a wave of professional respect that washed over me. So potent it was dizzying. Jessica was beaming, clapping harder than anyone. My parents were frozen, their faces, a comical, horrifying mix of shock and utter confusion. Their carefully constructed narrative had just been obliterated by a Nobel laureate in front of all their friends and colleagues. My father, desperate to regain control, made his final, fatal erreur. He stood again, raising his hands for quiet, a weak smile plastered on his face. "Well," he boomed, his voice too loud, "that is just wonderful news. Alara has always been so lucky with her little projects. It's just lovely that Dr. Thorne's influence and mentorship could help her get such a nice award." The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. He had done it. In front of everyone. He had attributed my life's work to luck and connections. A dead, excruciating silence fell upon the room. The Dean of Medicine slowly sat back in his chair, a single eyebrow raised in disbelief. Guests stared at their plates, at the ceiling, anywhere but at the spectacle of a father so blind he could not see his own daughter's brilliance. It was Chloe who broke the silence. Her voice was ice. "Dad, it wasn't luck, and it wasn't influence. It was work. I live with her. I saw the nights she never came home from the lab. I saw the data that covered every surface of her apartment. I saw her earn this. We all did." The dam broke. The party reformed, but its center of gravity had irrevocably shifted. A crowd of faculty, colleagues, and even Dr. T. Henderson, the chief of cardiology, swarmed around my small table, shaking my hand, asking about my methodology, offering congratulations. I was no longer a ghost. I was a star, suddenly and violently visible. And from across the room, I watched my parents become the very thing I had been for so long invisible. The rest of the party passed in a blur of surreal vindication. I was no longer an observer. I was the focal point. The Dean of Medicine engaged me in a lengthy conversation about the university's bioengineering facilities, subtly probing to see if I could be lured back after my fellowship. Colleagues who had barely nodded to me in the hallways now wanted to discuss my protein payload methodology. I saw my parents trying to leave, their movements small and hesitant. They weren't angry anymore. They looked diminished, lost in a world that had suddenly stopped reflecting the reality they had so carefully constructed. Across the room, Chloe caught my eye. She raised her champagne glass to me in a silent, solemn toast. It was a promise. A new beginning. They showed up at my apartment the next day. They came bearing gifts, a transparent attempt at damage control. My father placed a small, elegantly wrapped box on my coffee table. "We've been thinking," he began, his voice strained with forced sincerity. "With both of you girls starting your careers, we wanted to get you something special." Inside was a rose gold watch, identical to the one they'd given Chloe for her birthday 6 months earlier. The gesture was so clumsy, so utterly tone-deaf. I almost felt a pang of pity for them. I left the box on the table, untouched. "Audrey Alara," my mother said, her eyes red-rimmed. "We know you must feel overlooked, but you have to understand. Everything we did was because we knew you could handle the challenges. We knew you were strong. Chloe needed more help." There it was. The same convenient narrative. The same flawed logic they had used to justify a lifetime of inequality. But this time, I was no longer the quiet girl who would nod and accept it. "Is that what you call it?" I asked, my voice calm, steady, and devoid of the pleading emotion they were used to. "You call it help when you pay for her MCAT prep course, but tell me to use free online resources. You call it support when you cover her living expenses, but suggest I take out additional loans. You call it being practical when you fly, to her tennis matches, but skip my thesis defense. I stood up and walked to my bookshelf, pulling down my framed diploma. We both earned this, but I am the only one who truly paid for it. And I don't just mean with money. They flinched, the truth of my words finally landing with the force I had intended. We love you both equally, my mother whispered, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Maybe you do, I conceded, the anger in me finally giving way to a sad, quiet finality. But you haven't treated us equally, and a watch won't fix that. Your approval is not a prize I am competing for anymore. I opened the door. I think you should go. 3 weeks later, I stood in my empty apartment. Boxes filled with books and lab equipment were stacked against the walls. Labeled, Stockholm. Chloe sat on the windowsill, watching me tape up the last container. I still can't believe you're leaving next week, she said softly. It's going to be so quiet here. You'll be too busy with your residency to notice. I teased, but we both knew this was different. Our paths, which had run in a painful parallel for so long, were finally diverging. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I keep thinking about the party, about everything. All these years, I thought I was the lucky one. I got the attention, the support, the new car, but I was so focused on the things they were giving me, I didn't see what they were taking away. She looked at me, her expression full of a new, profound understanding. They were making me dependent. They were teaching me that I needed their help to succeed. Their neglect was the worst thing they ever did to you, Ilara. But it was also the thing that made you unstoppable. You never needed them. And I think I'm only just learning how to not need them, too. I sat beside her on the windowsill, the afternoon sun streaming in. You didn't do anything wrong, Chloe. I didn't do enough right, either, she countered. But I'm going to start. She took my hand, her grip firm. No more competition. No more pretending. Just sisters. I'd like that, I said, squeezing her hand back. After she left, I took one last look around the apartment that had seen so many of my lonely struggles and my quiet triumphs. I thought of the girl who had cried over a missed symposium, who had ached for a word of praise from her parents. I was grateful for her. Her hunger had fueled me. Her resilience had built me. But I didn't need to be her anymore. My worth wasn't something that could be given or withheld by anyone else. It was something I had built myself, from the inside out. One data point, one experiment, one grueling hour at a time. The journey to discovering your own value can be a long and difficult one, especially when the people closest to you don't see it. It's a quiet fight that so many of us face. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever had to learn to be your own biggest supporter, I hope you'll consider liking this video and subscribing. Sharing your own experiences in the comments creates a community where we can all be reminded that we are not resourceful. We are not self-sufficient. We are powerful.